All right, everybody, let me get rid of this banner and let me replace it with another banner. There we go. All right. I am Shawn Cressman. You are watching the Bald Eagle Podcast. I'm the Bald Eagle. Now, the Bald Eagle Podcast, if you're not aware, is a 100% Philadelphia Eagles podcast. That's all we talk about is the Eagles. Of course, we talk about other teams when we play them and things happen in reference to the Eagles, but we focus 100% on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Bald Eagle Podcast is part of the Philly Sports Alliance, and we have a sponsor. Our official sponsor, which is scrolling at the bottom, is La Terrain Watches. If you put in code PSA, you'll get a discount on some of their awesome watches. I have one. Don't have it on right now, but they're great watches. Look good, and they're actually not that expensive. So, all right, the Bald Eagle Podcast has 3 rules, okay, and I adhere to these rules very strictly. The first rule that is the most important to me: no politics. So on the Bald Eagle Podcast, we'll talk about the Eagles, we'll talk about football, but we will never talk about politics. The only time we would make an exception is if it impacted the game in some capacity. It sort of did with COVID, but we really didn't wade into any of people's opinions about COVID because then it would get political. We just talked about factual stuff. Secondly, we don't talk about personal information. I won't share anything personal about myself, not that you guys would care. And I don't talk about the players' personal stuff. I don't care. I'm not sure if you do, but frankly, all I care about is how they play on the field and things that impact their play on the field. So we don't talk about purchases they make or stupid things they do on the off season or even during the season. So, and lastly, I'm not censored. I say whatever I want. I don't give a shit. Okay. Now, the one thing about the Bald Eagle Podcast that I want to remind everybody about, because it's what makes the Bald Eagle Podcast special. We have some of our own unique things, like the Bald Eagle Fact, world famous. Everybody loves that. But we also are the home for the most in-depth play-by-play analysis during regular season and postseason games. I spend hours, literally hours, sometimes upwards of 8 hours, rewatching games, watching every play more than once from more than one different angle, and I dissect the play. And not every play am I going to go into detail. Routine running plays where there's no significant thing to talk about, we'll just skip over it. I'll include it, but I'll skip over it. But some of the important plays, you'll find out exactly what happened, who didn't do their job, what they should have done. And you have to get a good sense of how well people are playing. So, if we should keep people in the offseason, if, for specifically, Jalen Hurts was a focus last year and will definitely be this year. We're going to be, Bald Eagle Podcast listeners will have the most in-depth overview of Jalen Hurts and his season. And I would say this, it's somewhat, to me, it's exciting. I love going through the games and sharing my insight with you guys. But you kind of feel like maybe you find out that maybe some of the analysts that are on TV aren't quite looking as closely. So you kind of get a little bit of a little disappointment in knowing a little bit too much, I guess I would say. Anyway, keep an eye out for that coming back during the regular and postseason. Okay, let's get to our countdown. We always count down to something. There's always something to look forward to in the NFL season. This time, we're counting down to the off-season workouts, OTAs. We're approximately 6 days away. They start on May 31st, restart again June 2nd through 3rd, and then June 6th through 8th. Now, teams with head coaches or new head coaches were allowed to start their off-season workout programs as early as April 4th. All other teams had to wait till April 18th, but of course the Eagles aren't going to be very aggressive with these things. They're waiting all the way till May 31st. And they did that last year. They don't put a lot of work or time in during these periods, and they don't do a lot of, it's not real aggressive. It's essentially coaching. And they're one of 2 teams that are not holding a mandatory minicamp. The other team is Cincinnati, and their reasoning was, they got deep into the playoffs and they felt, they needed the extra rest. The next thing to look to is training camp. Should be around July 26th. If you remember last year, there were definite dates in the CBA, and that's the same thing this year. And everybody started essentially the same time. Now, some teams get a little bit of an earlier start. For example, if you start your season on a Thursday or Sunday, you can have your veterans report no earlier than 47 days before the first game. If you start your season on a Monday, you can have your veterans report no earlier than 48 days before your first game. The teams that play in the Hall of Fame game, which is the first preseason game, the game that starts off the preseason or essentially the season, they can have their veterans report 15 days before that Hall of Fame game. So what does that mean for this season, right? So that means Jacksonville and the Raiders can report no earlier than Wednesday, July 20th. The Rams and Buffalo can report no earlier than Saturday, July 23rd. And all remaining teams cannot report any earlier than Tuesday, July 27th. Now, you can have your rookies come in earlier, up to 7 days before veterans, but that's optional. Now, last year, we held joint practices with a couple of teams. The Patriots were one of them. This year, we're doing the same thing. Patriots and Jets, I think, last year. This year, we're going to be holding joint practices with the Browns at their stadium or their practice complex in Berea, Ohio. And that would be before our game at Cleveland on Sunday, August 21st. We'll also hold joint practices with the Miami Dolphins in Florida, and that would be before our game Saturday, August 27th. We play Miami in Miami, of course, at 7 p.m. Now, if you remember from last year, Nick Sirianni put more emphasis and had the players work harder during these joint practices than he did the subsequent preseason games. So it turned out to be, on a fan level, a pretty shitty preseason. We didn't see a lot of the starters. We didn't get to see anything real exciting. It was mostly, second, third, and reserve players. So somewhat disappointing. Although at the same time, you get to see those guys a little bit more, and then you can do some you can evaluate them on your own if you'd like. August 4th through 7th essentially starts the season, right? It's the Hall of Fame weekend when the Hall of Fame game is played. The game itself is on Thursday, August 4th. It's I always want to say Lehigh Valley because I'm from the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. The Las Vegas Raiders are at the Jacksonville Jaguars, 8 p.m. on Thursday, August 4th, Hall of Fame game. Our preseason, 3 weeks. We have a week bye in there because our first game is Friday, August 12th against the Jets at home at 7:30. Week 2 is Sunday, August 21st at Cleveland at 1 p.m. And then week 3 is Saturday, August 27th at Miami at 7 p.m. And all those games, all the preseason games anyway, will be on NBC 10 and 94 WIP radio. Now, regular season's kicked off Thursday, September 8th. That is the first regular season game. It's Buffalo at the Los Angeles Rams and is at 8:20 p.m. We start our season week 1 at Detroit, Sunday, November 11th, 1 p.m. Week 2, we're at home against Minnesota, Monday Night Football, September 19th at 8:30. Week 3 at Washington, Sunday, September 25th at 1 p.m. Week 4 against Jacksonville at home, Sunday, October 2nd, 1 p.m. Week 5 at Arizona, Sunday, October 9th, 4:25 p.m. Week 6 at home versus the Cowgirls, Sunday Night Football, October 16th, 8:20 p.m. We have a Week 7 bye, which I'm somewhat disappointed about, earliest bye in a while. Week 8 versus Pittsburgh at home, Sunday, October 30th, 1 p.m. Week 9 at Houston, Thursday Night Football, November 3rd, 8:15 p.m. Week 10 at home against the Washington Commanders, Monday Night Football, November 14th, 8:15 p.m. Week 11 at Indianapolis, Sunday, November 20th, 1 p.m. Week 12 at home against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football, November 27th, 8:20 p.m. Week 13 at home against Tennessee, Sunday, December 4th, 1 p.m. Week 14 at the Giants, Sunday, December 11th, 1 p.m. Week 15 at Chicago, Sunday, December 18th, 1 p.m. Week 16 at the Cowgirls, Saturday, December 24th, 4:25 p.m. So 3 away games in a row late in the season. And then we ended with 2 home games. Week 17 at home against the Saints, Sunday, January 1st at 1 p.m. And Week 18 versus the New York Giants. Undetermined when exactly that game will be, Saturday or Sunday, the 7th or 8th of January, and the time is to be determined. So third year in a row, we've started the season away. That's the longest streak since 2011, 2013. No back-to-back games until Week 13, but then I mentioned we have 3 in a row. And we get to close the season out with 2 home games. So not a horrible schedule. I mentioned we have an early bye, a Week 7 bye. I'm not happy with. I preferred our what do we have? Week 14 bye last week. Last year, amazing. We're able to rest late in the season. This time we're stuck with a Week 7 bye. Earliest since 2016 when we had a Week 4 bye, which is even earlier, and that doesn't sound good to me at all. The Giants and the Cowgirls have a bye in Week 9, and Washington has a bye in Week 14. Primetime games, we have 5. We're one of 13 teams to have 5 primetime games this year, and that's the most in the league. It's the most we've had since 2018. And the Cowgirls and us have been in the most primetime games since 2000. We've been in 94. Unfortunately, the Cowgirls have been in slightly more with 100. And we've played the Cowgirls in primetime every season since 2007. Somewhat of an exception in 2014. It wasn't a primetime game, but it was nationally televised. It was a Thanksgiving game. Strength of schedule real quick. We're the bottom 4 in the NFC East. We have the easiest schedule based on opponents' winning record last year. We're third. The Eagles are third easiest with an opponent scoring a win percentage of .464. Cowgirls and Washington are tied for the easiest at .462, and the Giants are 4th at .465. The LA Rams, appropriately, have the hardest schedule at .567. And then to end the season, Sunday, February 12th, 2023, Super Bowl 57 at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Now let's move on to the draft. Let's do a quick recap of the draft. Now, you'll probably remember if you watched my podcast last year, I do a lot of repeating myself. So the first few minutes of the podcast, we go over things similar, very similar things. I'll go over the schedule every week. I'm going to go over our draft picks every week, and I only do that for memory, right? I don't have a very good memory myself. Even studying all this stuff, I'll still forget players' names. I'll still forget who we play. So I constantly go over this stuff just to kind of get it built in my brain. And I do the same thing with our rookies, so that when I hear a name, while I'm watching the film, although I guess I could look it up, but when I look at the playing time and when I hear names with plays, I know that they're rookies or I know that they're recent acquisitions, right? So first round, 13th overall, we selected defensive tackle Jordan Davis from Georgia. He's that massive defensive tackle, speed that is faster than some of the best running backs, quarterbacks in the league. And all but one rookie has signed their contract. Then we traded the 18th and 101st overall to Tennessee for wide receiver A.J. Brown. I know he's not a draft pick, but he's somebody that I want to talk about. I think that was an amazing acquisition. Big physical veteran wide receiver that I wanted last year, but that we didn't get. Second round, 51st overall, center Cam Jurgens from Nebraska. He's the only one that hasn't signed his rookie contract. Third round, 83rd overall, linebacker Nakobe Dean from Georgia. Sixth round, 181st overall, linebacker Kyron Johnson from Kansas. And sixth round, 198th overall, tight end Grant Calcaterra from SMU. Now, I mentioned Jordan Davis being a huge defensive tackle. I'm hoping he has a meaningful impact on the running game. He's so big, and on our pressure, right? Pressure without having to stunt or to blitz. But then linebacker Nakobe Dean is a real fast linebacker. Had some success in coverage in college. So I'm excited for him to get out there and improve our linebackers in coverage, which has been one of our biggest weaknesses. Linebackers in coverage have struggled. We've signed a couple of undrafted rookie free agents. Josh Blackwell, a corner from Duke. Reed Blankenship, a safety from Middle Tennessee State. Kennedy Brooks, a running back from Oklahoma. Britton Covey, a wide receiver from Utah. William Dunkel, offensive lineman from San Diego State. Noah Ellis, a defensive tackle from Idaho. Ali Fayyad, linebacker from Western Michigan. Mario Goodrich, corner from Clemson. Josh Jobe, corner from Alabama. Josh Sills, offensive lineman from Oklahoma State. Carson Strong, a quarterback from Nevada, which, so far sounds pretty good. He's a big guy, has a strong arm, and according to Nick Sirianni, he's the only person that Nick Sirianni really commented on during rookie minicamp. He's got a big arm and is sharp and knows where to go to the ball, is exactly what he said. And those are good things out of a quarterback. Last but not least, Jared Williams, offensive lineman from Miami. All right, let's get to some Eagles news. Every week, going to update you on all the previous week's news from all the sources. I follow everybody, so you don't have to. The Eagles were granted international rights in Australia, New Zealand, and apparently, more importantly, Ghana. That means they can market and hold engagement or commercialization efforts in those countries. And they're the first NFL team to enter a market in Africa. Jonathan Gannon commented about a bunch of stuff. I thought the one that was most important was his comments about the safety position, because in my opinion, that's one of our weakest spots. Now with the addition of Bradbury at corner, of Hassan Reddick at linebacker, the new drafted linebackers that we have, the defensive tackles, I think we're going to be very aggressive on the defensive side. And I think we're stacked on the offense too, with some questions around Jalen Hurts, but otherwise extremely well. But the safety position is a question for me. He said that he feels like every player that we have can play at a high level. He included Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, Kayvon Wallace, which I was hoping would be, based on his size and speed, he could be, a top tier safety, but he hasn't really shown quite that much. Now he did injure his shoulder. I understand he had missed some games, but I'm hoping he makes his third year a big jump. Andre Chikari and Jared Maiden. So even though I don't have a lot of confidence in our safeties, it sounds like Jonathan Gannon does. But again, what would he say? Okay, a couple of roster moves, some recent roster moves, and then we're gonna kind of go backwards and talk about some older roster moves and kind of highlight those a little bit. So we signed wide receiver Josh Hammond from the Jags, signed corner Jimmy Moreland from the Texans, and we released linebacker Joe Ostman, who had been with the team since I think 2019. I don't know if you remember. I believe it was Joe Ostman that got laid out by one of the Browns running backs. I forget which one. Really good clip. But so I went over all of our draft picks in detail. I talked about their 40 times, the impact they'll have on the team. So now we're going to go over some of our free agent signings, and we'll talk about those. And I'm going to start with linebacker Hassan Reddick. I think that was a great signing. We signed him for 3 years, $45 million. $30 million of that's guaranteed, and the maximum value with incentives is $49.5 million. He was drafted 13th overall in the 2017 NFL draft by Arizona. Born in Camden, New Jersey, which is extremely close to Philadelphia, often, right across the water, right? He'll be 28 this season. He's 6'1", 235 pounds. He ran now I'm going to give you times for some of these things. I'm also going to give you percentages. When I give you percentages, that's just how he compared to other people in his position in the draft that he was taken. So in 2017, he ran a 4.5 240, and that put him in 99th percentile compared to all other linebackers. His vertical was 36.5 inches. That's 88th percentile. Broad jump, 133 inches, 99th percentile. He ran the 3-cone in 7.01 seconds. That's a 90th percentile. Now, he started with Arizona, had a rough first 3 years. He played mostly inside. He started 20 games, 3 forced fumbles, 7.5 sacks, 18 tackles for a loss, and 16 quarterback hits. But in 2020, he moved outside, played a little more defensive end, and rushed the passer more than playing inside and trying to cover and stop the run. And he excelled. He started 27 games, and in those 27 games, he had 8 forced fumbles, 23.5 sacks, 27 tackles for a loss, and 34 quarterback hits. So a lot of pressure. And in comparison, in those 2 years where he did well as an outside linebacker, only 4 players in the NFL had more sacks than Reddick over those 2 seasons. His 99 quarterback pressures over the last 2 years are tied for 15th among edge rushers. So a quality linebacker that could put pressure on the quarterback. And that should improve our defense. When you think about some of the deficiencies we had, we did not do a very good job of pressuring the quarterback. In fact, we were second last in sacks last year with only 29. So not good at all. We signed wide receiver Zach Pascal from the Indianapolis Colts. Not a huge splash, but I think a quality player. We gave him a 1 year, $1.5 million contract, all guaranteed. He can earn an additional $1 million based on incentives. He was undrafted out of Old Dominion. First player from Old Dominion invited to the NFL Combine. He caught an Old Dominion record 233 passes for 3,184 yards and 30 touchdowns in 4 seasons. He will be 27 at the start of the season. He's 6'2", 214 pounds, so he's got some height to him, which is nice. He runs the 40 and 4.55, which is not very fast. In fact, in his draft class, that was 52nd percentile based on other wide receivers. His vertical was 36 inches, which is only 65th percentile. His broad jump, 126 inches, which was somewhat good, 86th percentile. And his 3-cone was 7.11 seconds, which was poor, 32nd percentile. But so he's not a real fast, quick guy, but he's a hard worker. Originally signed by Washington, cut by them, then cut twice by Tennessee. Then he found some success in Indianapolis as a special teamer. In 16 games in 2018, 4 of those are starts. He had 27 receptions, 268 yards, which is an average of 9.9 per reception, and 2 touchdowns. In 2019, he played in 16 games, starting in 13, had 41 receptions, 607 yards for a 14.8 average, and 5 touchdowns. And then in 2020, he started 14 games out of 16, had 44 receptions, 629 yards, which is a 14.3 average and 5 touchdowns. Now, you might say to yourself, well, that's not the best production, right? And it's not. 600 yards in a season, not the best, not the worst. It's a solid third guy. However, if we look back pre-Devontae Smith times, he would have probably been the leading receiver on our team. So think about that. Now, admittedly, I didn't look at the stats. I should have. But I would bet that he would be, excluding tight ends, he probably would have been the top receiver in on our team. And I'm going to look at that. I'll tell you about that maybe next week. Now, he struggled in 2021, which also was the year that Carson Wentz was the quarterback. He started 13 out of 16 games. He only had 38 receptions for 384 yards, which is a 10.1 average, and he had 3 touchdowns. But I mentioned he's a tough guy, and that's exactly what Nick Sirianni liked about him. Big fan of his work ethic, and apparently used him as an example during team meetings. And he's a very versatile player. Played a lot of time on special teams, and he's lined up in both the slot and the outside position. So, I don't know if he has a spot on the team. Frankly, when I think about it, I think Greg Ward should make it. Greg Ward did amazing 2 years ago. He dropped off last year, but was open every play when Wentz had his decline. But then you have Hightower. You have a bunch of guys that can compete. Hightower. You have some Devin Allen we signed. Carrick Wheatfall. A bunch of guys that somebody needs to emerge as the leader, and it could very well be Zach Pascal. Moving on, we signed an exciting signing, right? Our defense struggled, and corner was a struggle. Slade did a decent job, but the opposite corner struggled a lot. So we signed James Bradbury, the corner from New York, the Giants. We gave him a 1-year, $7.25 million contract, all guaranteed, including a $6.215 million signing bonus. He was a second-round, 62nd overall pick by Carolina in the 2016 NFL draft, drafted from Samford. He'll be 29 when the season starts. He's 6'1", 212. He ran the 40 and 4.5, which isn't that great, 64th percentile compared to other corners in the 2016 Combine. His vertical is 36 inches, 59th percentile. Broad jump, 124 inches, 73rd percentile. He ran the 3-cone in 6.91, which was slightly better than let's see, both Hassan Riddick and Zach Pascal, 6.91 seconds. That year was 60th percentile in the Combine. He started all 6 seasons since he's entered the NFL, playing over 98% of the defensive snaps every year. 2016 was an off year. He played 94%, not a big difference, and consistently over 20% of the special team snaps as well. In 2020, according to Pro Football Focus, he was one of the top 5 players in his position. He had 78 targets, and he allowed 44 receptions for 454 yards, 3 interceptions, and 14 passes defended. And of course, in 2020, he was voted into the Pro Bowl. So a big improvement to the other side of the other corner, a Pro Bowl guy. Great compliment to Slay, I think, and he should improve a defense that allowed a league worst opponent quarterback completion percentage of 69.4. We were the worst in the league with completion percentage. And again, that's something you knew if you watched the Bald Eagle podcast, because every game, whenever we faced a above mediocre quarterback, they completed a good 70 to 80% of their completions. I think Brady completed 80. I think Prescott was over 70. So very embarrassing for our corners, but that may have been, and I don't think they avoided the long pass either. So, any case, so those are 3 of our recent acquisitions. Next week I'll go over another 3, and we'll just work our way through them. We'll go through the undrafted free agents as well. By the time we get through all those, there should be more things to talk about. Injury update, nothing serious. I wasn't aware, but apparently Josh Sweat had internal bleeding that caused him to miss our playoff game against the Bucs last year. He says he's fully recovered, said it was serious, but he's completely fine now. NFL news, the NFL has decided to keep the scouting combine in Indianapolis for 2023 and 2024. Rumors were that they were going to move it around like the NFL draft. There were some concerns, though, because Indianapolis has all the facilities right near the stadium. And that's essentially why, according to Roger Goodell, everybody is comfortable there. So they're going to shift their focus from, apparently, at least for now, trying to move it like they do the draft, to improving medical evaluations and trying to make those more efficient. 75 NFL tight ends, including Greg Olsen, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce, are going to have Tight End University in Nashville again this year. It'll be from June 22nd to 24th. We'll see if our tight ends go, if any of them go. I think last year, Dallas Goedert went last year, but I'm not sure if anybody else did. But I'll keep you up to date on that. The NFL has made the quarterback's coach position subject to the Rooney Rule. For those of you who aren't aware, the Rooney Rule requires coaches to conduct outside interviews with a minority or female candidate. They don't necessarily have to hire them, but they have to at least interview one as part of the interviewing process. And just some NFC East news, because I thought it was somewhat important. Because when I think about this team, some of their largest weapons that I think will make it a game against us weren't at their first offseason workout. So for Washington, the Commanders, which, I don't know that they're going to be, I think they'll be better than they were last year. I think Carson Wentz is a good enough quarterback to improve. And I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk when we play them either. It's not a gimme, but I think we'll beat them in both games. But their largest weapons, Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat, weren't at their first offseason workout. And wasn't able to find any specific reason as to why. So we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe there's some contract issues, or who knows? But let's hope. All right, that is it for the news. That is it for the recap of our draft picks. Now it's time for the world famous bald eagle fact. One of my favorite parts of the show. I love the Philadelphia Eagles. That's why I have a podcast about them, right? But I don't, frankly, I didn't do much research prior to having this podcast, so I don't know a lot about the early teams. I don't know a lot about their coaches. I started watching when I was 9, which means, and Cunningham was the quarterback. Reggie White was on the team. Great to watch them. But I don't know a lot about what happened before. So the bald eagle fact is, random things like that. I go through each year of the Eagles seasons while since they've been a part of the NFL in 1933. I talk about every one of their coaches, all their Hall of Famers, all their Pro Bowlers. The NFL has a list of top games and plays. If they're on that list, we'll talk about that. Get a good history lesson on some of the things that happened. So today, for the bald eagle fact, I'm going to talk about the Eagles' first head coach ever, and that's Lud Ray. His full name is James R. Ludlow Ray. He was a professional football player, coach, and co-founder of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was born February 7th, 1894 in Philadelphia, and he died also in Philadelphia at the age of 73, which I don't think that would, back in the early 1900s, I think that was a pretty long life. He played high school football at Chestnut Hill Academy in Philadelphia, played college football at the University of Pennsylvania as a center, and he did that from 1914 to 1916. Now, again, if you listen to the show and you remember the world famous bald eagle fact, you'll know that players back then were badasses, right? Played both ways and served in the war. In fact, that's what Lud Ray did. He served in World War I as a Marine. He returned as a senior at the University of Pennsylvania in 1919 after the war was over. And he was also played catcher on the Penn baseball team. So this guy played both ways as a center. I don't know what his other position was. And then he served in the Marines. Me included, I bet the majority of the men out there couldn't have done all three of those, even if we wanted. He played professionally for the Buffalo Niagaras, the Buffalo Prospects, and the Buffalo All-Americans. So they changed names. That was from 1918 to 1921. In 1920 and 1921, Buffalo was a member of the NFL, formerly called the American Professional Football Association. From 1923 to 1929, he served as an assistant football coach at Penn. In 1930, he succeeded Lou Young as the head coach at Penn, but he was fired on December 12th, 1930, due to friction with players, alumni, and the public. So this guy must have been an asshole. He pissed off the players, he pissed off former players, and he pissed off fans. I mean, I don't know who's left, right? I guess the administration, right? I guess the executives maybe weren't pissed off. And I couldn't find a lot of details about exactly what he did or anything like that. There was an article from 1930 that said it was personal and that it was the best for the team, but there are no specifics. A few years later, in 1932, he was named the head coach of the NFL expansion Boston Braves, who are now the Washington Commanders. That year, they went 4-4-2, and he quit after that first season. In 1933, one of his former teammates and fellow assistant at Penn, Bert Bell, convinced him to be the coach for the NFL expansion Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if you guys aren't aware, real quick, the Philadelphia Eagles weren't in the league until 1933, and that's because the NFL's played their games on Sundays, and prior to 1933, there were laws in the state of Pennsylvania that said you could not play a sporting event on Sundays. So they couldn't enter the NFL. They operated as the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets in another league and played all their games on Saturdays, but they could never enter the NFL. In 1933, the state of Pennsylvania, I think it's called the Blue Sky Law, or they created a law that allowed teams to play on Sundays, and immediately the Pittsburgh Steelers / Pirates were born, and so were the Philadelphia Eagles. Ironically, another interesting fact about the Eagles when they started in 1933, they were named after the logo of Franklin Roosevelt's, a part of his Green New Deal, and their colors were blue and yellow. So kind of interesting tidbits there. So as a head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, the first head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, from 1933 to 1935, he coached 31 games, and they were 9-21-1. I didn't look around, but based on their division rankings, that was most likely one of the worst coach tenures in the Eagles' history. They failed to make the playoffs every year he was the coach. We were part of what was called the NFL Eastern Division, which included the New York Giants, the Boston Redskins, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and the Pittsburgh Pirates. In 1933 and 1934, we were second last in the NFL Eastern Division. The only team that we were better than was the also expansion Pittsburgh Pirates / Steelers. And in 1935, we were dead last in the NFL Eastern Division. In 1936, the Eagles were suffering from significant financial losses and were offered up for sale at a public auction. Amazing to think that the Philadelphia Eagles were at one point couldn't make money, and so they were auctioned off to the highest. It's just amazing to think that a $1 billion team was worth nothing only 90 years ago. I guess it's been a while. So Bert Bell, if you remember him, he was the only bidder, and Bert Bell became the team's sole owner. The only guy that wanted the team. Hilarious. If only I could go back to 1936 and bid on the Eagles and then just hold them. Let's keep it in my family. We'd be rich. We'd be billionaires. On April 28th, Ray was offered a position, but he was asked to take a 66% salary cut as the head coach, and he said, "Fuck that, I'm out of here," and he left the team. I guess not a lot of real dedication to the Eagles, so more about money. Although we don't know how much he was making, so he may not have been able to live off of a third of his salary. From 1938 to 1945, Ludray was an assistant coach for Manhattan College, St. Joe's Prep, Holy Cross, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not much more information after 1945. Didn't play or coach, or of course he didn't play, but didn't coach or anything like that in the NFL. And then of course he died at 73, which would have been like 20 years later. And that was the first ever Philadelphia Eagles head coach, Lud Ray. All right, that's the end of the Bald Eagle podcast. I apologize. That's not the end of the podcast. That's the end of the Bald Eagle Fact. Do me a favor. Follow me on everything that you can think of. Any social media that's out there, except for like TikTok and Snapchat. I'm not on those. But follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Check me out on all those. Now, if you look up the Bald Eagle Podcast, remember to type fully in the Bald Eagle Podcast. I'm not popular enough yet just to type in Bald Eagles. If you type in Bald Eagle, you'll probably just get a bunch of actual Bald Eagles. And I'm on every Wednesday at 6 p.m. with few exceptions. We talk all Eagles. Now, we partnered up the Philly Sports Alliance partnered up with the Painted Line. So if you're watching from the Painted Lines YouTube channel, that's why. We've also partnered with Six Pack Coverage. They're a huge media company out of Tennessee. They have podcasts about everything. They have podcasts about sports, fitness, travel, food, finance. So if you're looking for, how can I eat better? How, what routine can I, what fitness routine can I follow? Check out Six Pack's coverage. They have a lot of information on there. And do me a favor, follow and listen to all of the Philly Sports Alliance shows. Take a look right now. We got a great lineup for almost every day of the week. I'm sorry, Graham, you can't see this. So just listen, okay? Mondays at 6, the Football Smack Talk show. It is a all NFL show. Of course, we're all Eagles fans here. I take that back. Most of us are Eagles fans here. Ryan Reese and Eric Ward are Eagles fans. So they focus more on the Eagles, but they talk all NFL. Mondays at 7:30, the Diamond Club podcast. That's an all Phillies show featuring John Hunter, Chris Lahiff, and Danny Hart. Tuesdays at 6:30, the Philly Broadcast. That's all for Philadelphia sports featuring Ryan Reese and Ryan Finneran. Wednesdays at 6, you are in front of your Facebook or Instagram or YouTube watching the Bald Eagle podcast, finding out all information about the Eagles. Wednesdays after my show at 8 p.m. is Mixed Sports. Mixed Sports is a NFL podcast featuring Eric Ward and Jay Landry. I mentioned that everybody's an Eagles fan, and I forgot that Jay Landry is a Dallas Cowgirls fan. Really makes you question his opinion, but nobody's perfect. Thursdays at 5:30, Tendies on Pattison, all Flyers. If you want to know what's going on with the Flyers, listen to that podcast. Paul Petcho, Jack Griffin, and Chris Lahiff will tell you everything you need to know. And last but not least, Thursday at 7, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs, a wrestling podcast featuring Eric Ward and Joe Barry. They'll get you caught up on everything wrestling. All right. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Check me back next week, Wednesday at 6, and go Birds.